Okay. Okay.
Okay, everybody, good evening.
That'd be
The North Miami Planning Commission agenda is, the meeting is now underway. It's Thursday, September 12th, 2024. This is a special meeting because it's not on a regularly scheduled day. So call to order. May we have a roll call of the board members, please?
Okay, thank you, Chairman Ernst. Chairman Ernst,
Here.
Vice Chair McDermott,
Here.
Commissioner Each is excused. Commissioner Blamire,
Present.
Commissioner Seyfried,
Present.
Commissioner Clark is absent. Commissioner Bob,
Present.
and Commissioner Besson.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. At this time, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Staff and Madam Secretary, I want to note that we have an amendment to the agenda. Noted on the July 2nd minutes, there was a error in the members that were here. Naomi Blumer was marked as excused, but she was here. If we could go ahead and make that.
I'm going to blame that on the glitches because I could have sworn I changed that. But yes, I will make that amendment.
Thank you so
sir.
much. Very good. Under communications, do we have a date for the next planning commission meeting?
Yes, it's going to be October 1st,
October 1st.
Tuesday, October 1st.
I think that's the second.
And there are,
October 1st is a Tuesday.
Okay.
I know because my birthday is that Monday.
Okay.
very good, thank you. So we'll go ahead and begin the public hearings then. To council, do we, is this a quasi judicial item?
Neither of them are
Either
quasi-judicial, so
Thank you,
no
sir.
disclosures are required.
Very good, thank you. All right, so first item on the agenda tonight is PC 17-95. This is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of North Miami, Florida, repealing Section 19-98, water and sewer capacity fees, in Chapter 19 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities, amending Chapter 29 entitled Land Development Regulations, Article 3 entitled Development Review, specifically at Division 14, New Development Impact Fees, repealing Transportation Impact Fees, adopting new Stormwater Impact Fees, combining Parks and Library Impact Fees, combining General Government and Police Impact Fees, amending land use categories within the Parks and Recreation and General Government Impact Fee schedules, assessing water and sewer impact fees on the basis of water meter capacity rather than the use type, adopting an updated impact fee study, providing for purpose and intent, providing for definitions, providing rules of construction, providing findings, providing for conflict of severability, providing for repealer, providing for codification, providing for an effective date. May we have staff report, sir?
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. This is Derek Cook, the Assistant Director with Development Services Department. As stated by the chairman, the item before you is a text amendment to the land development regulations specific to new development impact fees. This request, as stated again, is to the land development regulations, the LDR's text amendment for Article 3, Division 14, to adjust impact fees proportionally to the existing infrastructure expenditures in compliance with Florida statute. This location is citywide. This evening, I have with you on the phone is our consultant, which is Clancy Mullen, he is the president of Duncan and Associates. He will also have a presentation associated with these impact studies. He was the principal who did the study to get us to this point to bring this item before you this evening. I will go over a few items in my presentation, and then after that, he will speak via the cell phone because we are having technical difficulties as it is, and I will proceed with his PowerPoint presentation by processing it through on his behalf here in front of you. So what we have here is the next step. We have content and intent. So the city introduced an impact fee in 2010 to support the infrastructure of several key areas: transportation, parks, recreation, library services, general government, police, water, sewer facilities. Initially, the fees were set for 50% of the maximum amount calculated in 2007. The study for most categories and 100% amount calculated for 2010. The study for water and sewer facilities. Since then, these fees have not been updated. That is 17 years. The original study was done in 2007. Fees were updated at that time, and we have not had an update since 2007. The impact fees are charged to impose on new development to cover a fair share of the costs associated with expanding infrastructure to accommodate growth. Unlike traditional negotiated developer contributions, impact fees are calculated using a standard formula based on objective factors like the number and type of new housing units. These fees are paid once up front at the time of building permit issuance, ensuring that each new project contributes its fair share to community infrastructure. As stated earlier, since this impact fee has not experienced an increase since 2010, that's incorrect, 2707, the LDR's amendment adjustment to impact the impact fees proportionally to the existing infrastructure in compliance with Florida statute. So to say that this LDR update, to reiterate, is our effort to bring our impact fees up proportional to the expenditure of our infrastructures that we have today. As stated earlier, we have not had an increase since 2007. The one we supposed to have one in 2010, so it's been 17 years since we've had our last impact fee update. This amendment has been reviewed pursuant to standards set forth in Article 3, Division 10, Section 3-1004 of these LDRs. And what we do in our analysis, we look at 6 elements to see how it would impact our city. The first one that we look at is whether the amendment promotes the public health, safety, and welfare. So in that in mind, we looked at that and we said, it has an impact. This adjustment does impact the public health, safety, and welfare of the city by adjusting the fees better accommodating existing infrastructure costs and future costs. Second one is whether the amendment permits uses the comprehensive land use plan prohibits in the area affected by the zoning map change or text amendment. It does not. It does not change the comprehensive plan as it relates to uses. Matter of fact, it enhances that by increasing our impact fees so we can better accommodate our infrastructure that's going to be needed to accommodate the new structures that are going on in the city. Whether this amendment allows density or intensity in excess of the density and intensity which are permitted by the future land use categories of the affected properties. The amendment does not have an impact. It does not allow for you to exceed our density that is articulated in our comprehensive plan. Again, what these fees would do is help us accommodate for these impacts. As you know, we just recently got our comprehensive plan codified by the state, so it is active. And in that comprehensive plan, we added 8,000 bonus units as part of that comprehensive plan for development. D, whether the amendment causes a decline in the level of services for public infrastructure, such as subject to concurrency requirements, to a level of service which is less than the minimum requirement of the comprehensive land use. As it is, as the theme has been, this amendment will not reduce it. The attempt with this amendment is to generate funds so we can better accommodate our infrastructure as we develop here in the city. E, whether the amendment directly conflicts with the goals, objectives, or policies of the comprehensive land use plan. No, it does not. Matter of fact, it aligns with the comprehensive plan by bringing our impact fees up to standard. F, whether the amendment furthers the orderly development of the city of North Miami. This amendment should allow for more orderly development of the city by providing impact fees adjusted to better infrastructure demand and new development. So in our discussions about the ordinance associated with this impact fee, we saw some elements that that we felt that should be edited, and we are going to identify these for you. The one that is prevalent is in section 7, is section 7 of your document. With our changes, it will become section 8 of the document, and this is the effective date. The ordinance now reads, the ordinance shall not become effective until 90 days after adoption by mayor and city council. Our edits are to state that the ordinance shall become effective on, and it should be a strike through, until 90 days after adoption by mayor and city council. And our esteemed attorney, Mr. Hale, also had an adjustment that he would like for us to identify that he presented this morning that I missed. That was on ice cream, excuse me. Go
But
ahead.
Derek, since you've mentioned my name, I thought we were saying 90 days after notice of adoption. Did we change that? I don't know. Jennifer?
So my recollection, Derek, is that we were going to actually we were going to calculate per statute what the date certain was going to be. Internally, we discussed 90 days after notice of adoption, but that for clarity and transparency to the public, that we were going to put in the date certain after adoption by mayor and council. That was my recollection of the change.
So is this the way it should go, 90 days after adoption?
I think notice is appropriate. I defer to you, Madam Attorney. My apologies.
On this particular section, I think we were going to, in parentheses, put insert date so that we could put in the date certain, and then we were going to do, as Gary said, say honor until 90 days after notice of adoption by the mayor and city council.
Where would you put the insert, after which word?
Where it says, this ordinance shall not become effective on until, there should be a parentheses there that says insert date. So it'll have, so that way when the public is looking at this ordinance, they will know what that exact date. And we, the city, the staff, and the residents will all be on the same page as to what that date will be.
Okay, so we're going to strike 90.
We're going to leave that in so
Still
that
leave
they
that
know
in.
that we complied with the
Still-
statute.
It's still 90, but the question is, at what point do the 90 days start running?
Right.
It's not adoption, it's notice of adoption.
So just to be clear, and if I may further elaborate, so the juxtaposition that we have here is that 90 days after we have adoption, it comes in effect. So what we were discussing is the language talks about notice. 90 days after notice in the state statute. So in our attempt to be overly cautious, we're saying that we're going to notice, our intent is to notice, and then after this notice, after adoption, then that clock starts.
Okay, I'm just looking for the wording.
Yeah,
as to
so I
where
haven't
you're
put it
gonna-
here. We can
where
really
you're gonna put
update
it in.
that, Mr. Chair, to be in accordance to what we are discussing
Okay.
here. So as I would understand it, it would say, this ordinance shall not become, shall become.
I think I prefer this ordinance shall become effective on, and then the date,
Effective on, insert date.
insert date, in parentheses.
You're still striking the word on?
No, we're going to leave on, we're going to strike not.
Okay,
Strike not. Are we keeping until? On is a new word, so that's why I have it underlined and
yeah,
highlighted.
right.
I don't think you need until, I would
Okay.
strike until.
That I meant to strike that. Insert date, okay, and that's in parentheses, and then we go 90 days.
Comma, 90 days, maybe IE? What do you think, Gary?
Or could you say, or until, with the date in parentheses, and/or.
It's not going to be an
And-
or, it's a
yeah.
specific date. So
Yeah.
it shall become effective on, and then you have a parenthetical that says, insert date dash,
Effective on, put the date, and I would say which is 90 days after adoption,
Otherwise,
notice of
exactly.
adoption by
Okay.
the mayor
Okay.
and city council.
Which is 90 days after notice of adoption.
By the mayor and city council.
Okay,
Do
So
we all
to-
need
to
to
read the
agree on
language
that
ag-
change, or can we just leave that until we're ready to adopt it? I mean, we could all agree now on that, if we want to get any input.
it's
from-
your discretion, sir.
Yeah, we're all fine with
We've
that?
already
Okay,
discussed
All
it
right.
with Mr.
We're
Held,
good.
and he was okay with it.
all right. Thank you.
And the second element is, the ordinance also will require modification to include the extraordinary circumstances, which Mr. Mullen will go over this evening about in his presentation. The analysis is to include a title adjustment. We're going to add language in the title. We'll add some whereas clauses, and we're going to add a new section 3. That new section 3 will bump our number up. It used to be 7 sections that you had at the end. Now it becomes 8 with that new section 3.
did you mention paragraph 5 as well? Paragraph 5, did you mention that? Because we had this October 1 date, and now we're changing that to insert effective date. All right.
I understand what you're saying, Gary. Yeah, it was that, we had that. So also as a change is in, it'd be section 3-1401, and excuse me, it's actually section 3-1402, number 5. And we have a change there. It used to have October 1st, 2024, with the anticipation that we would have, but understanding we won't meet that date, we have changed that to be insert effective date, and that is in parentheses. That is the extent of our modifications, and any that you, as the commissioners, wish to insert, you're welcome to do so after the presentation, and we will act accordingly. With that in mind, again, I'm going to introduce to you, you have Clancy Mullen. He is the president of Duncan Associates. He is the consultant who was intimately involved in the preparation of this study, impact study, and he has a presentation for you this evening as well.
Good evening, Mr. Mullen. Can you hear us okay?
Oh, he's on cell phone.
Yeah, he's on the cell phone. Mr. Mullen, you can speak. You still there, Clancy?
I'm still here.
Okay. All right.
Good evening, Mr. Mullen. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir. Good evening. For the record, we need you to state your name and an address for us.
Clancy Mullen, 1617 West 9th Street, Austin, Texas.
All
Can
right.
you hear that?
Yes, got it. Thank you, sir.
If I may, I just
Okay.
want to point out for everyone's benefit that there will be a slight delay because he's watching this on streaming,
right.
and there may be a 3-second delay.
Okay, we understand that there will be a 3-second delay, sir, so we will be patient with your response.
So Clancy, can you see that the presentation is available? That's not. Do we want to start with the extraordinary circumstances, or we want to start with the other one?
Well, let's keep it on this slide.
You may proceed.
Yeah, I've got my live stream speaker muted, so you're not hearing an echo, hopefully. But it may make it a little more difficult for me to hear you. Yeah, I'd like to start off by just alerting you to the time pressure we're under with this study. My contract was executed January 9th of this year. In March, the legislature made revisions that are going to go into effect October 1st, which say basically that the study needs to be adopted within a year of its initiation, which means at least by early January. Now, the plan is to first adopt the impact fee update and extraordinary circumstances, and then in October, and then sometime after that to adopt the mobility fees. And I think they're on the same, I don't know exactly when that contract was executed, but I think it's on the same, about basically the same time. So the idea would be to get both of these ordinances adopted this year. So that's the plan. Doesn't give us a lot of time, because if we don't get them adopted within a year of starting the study, we need to start the study over again. And that's going to throw us back another year. Okay, well, let's go to the first slide. I'm still seeing the starting slide. Derek, can you go to the legal basics?
It's up.
It's up, Clancy. You cannot see that?
Okay, there it is. Yeah, I guess maybe that's the delay. And Derek covered some of this. The fees need to be proportional to the impact of the development, based on the existing level of service. They can only be spent on improvements that add capacity, so not replacement, repair, maintenance, or operations. They need to be reduced to account for outstanding debt on existing improvements. Now, the city doesn't have any actual outstanding debt, but it does have outstanding obligations to use impact fees to repay the developer of the Solomia project, those developer credits for improvements they've made as part of that project. All right, so the next slide, okay, the overview. As Derek said, it may have been a little confusing. The current fees are based on studies from 2007. Now, they weren't adopted until 2010. Water and sewer at 100%, the rest at 50%. But those fees are still based on the 2007 study, or they were actually two different studies. So changes in this update really quickly. The transportation fee is repealed in this ordinance. It will be replaced later with a mobility fee. That's not going to go into effect exactly concurrently, but presumably a short time after this ordinance is adopted. The parks and library fees are combined. They're separate right now. They can be combined into a parks and recreation, an updated parks and recreation fee. Same with police and general government. They would be combined into a updated general government fee. And the purpose for this combination, combining these fees, is to give the city more flexibility. So the parks and library fee, the current parks and library fees would be the new parks and rec fee could be spent on either libraries or parks and rec. Now, there may be an issue with the outstanding balances in the current accounts. We may need to spend those down we need to discuss this with the city attorney's office. We may need to spend those down for the purposes they were collected for separately. I just lost the power. Oh, there it is. No, we're going back a slide. Okay, I see we've gone to the next slide. Can we go back? Or was I finished? Yeah, no, we need to go back. Can we go back to the previous slide, Derek?
It just takes a moment, Clancy, for it to materialize on the screen where you are.
Okay. So, in addition, okay, the next change was the water and sewer fee. The updated water and sewer fees are based on meter size. They're currently based on land use. The fee schedules are going to be simplified. The current water and sewer fees based on land use, there's 50 different land use categories. The new meter sizes, there's only 11 different types of meters. So that's simplifying that one considerably. The police and general government fees have, I think, in excess of 20. I forget what the exact number is. We're reducing that down to 6. So we're simplifying the fee schedules. The increases need to be phased in. This has been a requirement since 2021. But the first time you've encountered it because you haven't changed your fees, unless extraordinary circumstances are found. So the fees are increasing for parks, rec, general government, and water. Now let's go to see those changes on the next slide. Now for what I've called the non-utility fees, those are the current fees that are being shown. For parks is the current park and library fee combined. Those two fees combined for single family, detached, detached. Same for general government. The police and general government fees are summed to get you the current fee for the broader category. And then the second two columns are showing you the updated fees. And the last two columns are showing you the percent increases. And the biggest percent increases, which are the one that really affects phasing, are the 45% for parks and the 581% for the retail commercial of the general government fees. So the 45% multifamily fee increase and the 581% retail commercial increase. Those are the largest increases in the two categories. And below it is the utility impact fees. And for the utilities, we can really only compare the single family fee, the current single family fee with the updated fee for the smallest meter, because typically the single family fee does require the smallest meter. That is a 3/4 inch meter. The other ones we can't really compare. The other land use categories we can't really compare. But these two we can compare. And it shows the water fee increasing 300%, a little over 300%. The sewer fee going down 28%. So based on this comparison, which really doesn't tell us much about what the revenue impacts are, because you're not getting very many new single-family units. And, you know, a larger meter's going to accommodate many more units, or most commercial. The smallest meter can accommodate a lot of commercial uses, unless they're really big. It's not really telling you a whole lot, but about revenue impacts. But it is a comparison that we can make with the current fees. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Phasing requirements. So the limitations of the statute as of 2021, when those went into effect. Any increase up to 25% must be phased in over 2 years. Any increase of up to 50% must be phased in over 4 years. Fees may not be increased more than once every 4 years, except for phased increases, which must be in equal annual amounts. So the extraordinary circumstances option basically requires an analysis to be prepared that demonstrates the extraordinary circumstances. We meant to get you that to you in your packet, but it didn't get in your packet, unfortunately. And I think you just got it earlier today. But I'm going to be summarizing that for you anyway. 2 publicly noticed workshops must be held on the analysis. We had hoped this would be the first one, but we got our wires crossed and rushed to get this on your agenda. And it's not noticed as a separate item. So this isn't going to count. So there's going to have to be 2 notice workshops later, presumably in front of the city council. And the ordinance adopting the increases that vary from phasing requirements must be adopted by a 2/3 majority of the governing body. Okay, next slide. So the fees are increasing only for parks, general government, and water. The sewer fee is going down. The stormwater fee is new. And while that may be an increase from 0, you can't really calculate a percent increase, so we can't do phasing. The transportation fee is going to be repealed. That fee is currently very small. It's like $140 for a single family unit. And that's going to be replaced at some point in the near future with the mobility fee. The fees have not been updated in 17 years, as we've discussed. That's kind of one of the extraordinary circumstances. Costs have increased significantly. Significant improvement needs exist, and phasing would have negative revenue effects. So those are the extraordinary circumstances we've identified, and I'll go through them for each of the facility types. So starting with Parks and Rec. So these fees have not been updated, like all of them, in 17 years. But the fees are increasing only modestly, less than 50%. I mean, they were adopted at 50%. It would take a 100% increase to get them basically to where they were in 2007, the maximums that were calculated in 2007. The CPI has increased by, more than that, by 51% since 2007. CPI is Consumer Price Index. So they're increasing very modestly considering. And why they're not going up more, we don't actually know because we don't have the original study. That seems to have gotten lost in the ether in the last 17 years.
So can I ask you real quick, sir? Your methodology without that information, can you explain a little bit how you could come about with the adjusted figures without that
The
information?
adjusted figures are what we're basing it on is the existing level of service. So what the existing facilities that we can identify, the value of those facilities would justify after, giving credit for those developer credits. So, we can't say, okay, this changed from the original study, because we don't know what the original study was. We can't really make that comparison. But we can say, here's your updated fee based on what you have today. And the amount of development, what you have in terms of capital assets and what you have in terms of development, existing development. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir, you may continue.
Yeah. So capital needs, the city has been planning on purchasing this building for the Galvin Community Center. It leases that facility right now. It would take $11.5 million to purchase it. That the former city manager had said that was going to happen. The city had enough money to do that, although certainly not impact fee money. We have a new city manager. It hasn't been purchased yet. So we did not include that as an asset. And it's not factored into the fee as a city asset, but it certainly would constitute an asset if the city purchased it. So that's a capital need. It could be funded with whatever impact fees are available for Parks and Rec. So the revenue effects of phasing, the city would collect 27% less compared to immediate adoption than it would otherwise. That's a loss of about $250,000 over the 4-year phase-in period. Okay, if we go to the next slide, talk about general government. Again, the fees have not been updated in 17 years. Building costs have increased 85%. That's based on the Engineering News Record Building Cost Index. Now, if you take into consideration that those fees, the current fees were only adopted at 50%, that alone would account for the single family increase. So we're certainly not for the retail family, the retail commercial increase, but it would account for the single family increase at least. Capital needs, the city's been planning to build a new city hall police station combination to replace the current overcrowded police station in City Hall. Not all of that, of course, would be eligible for impact fees. Some of that's replacing existing facilities that would be either repurposed or used for other purposes or demolished. The effects of phasing, the city would collect 12% less than you would under current fees over the next 4 years. That's a loss of about 24 million. Well, no, that's, there would be a loss of about 24 million compared to not phasing at all over the 4-year period. And would require 22 years to fully implement the updated fees. And finally, water. Again, the fees have not been updated in 17 years. Water treatment costs have increased by over 500%. Now, much of that's due to the need to comply with new EPA clean water rules. And in terms of capital needs, $120 million is what the city's consultants estimate would be the cost upgrade and expand the existing treatment plant. Again, not all of that would be eligible for impact fees, but some of it would. The effects of phasing, it would require 14 years to fully implement. You would collect 43% less revenue if you phased them in than without phasing. And the final slide it just summarizes what the implementation options would be. So if extraordinary circumstances, if the commission, if the city council does not find that extraordinary circumstances, that these rise to the level of extraordinary circumstances, at least a determination is not made by a supermajority vote, you'd need to adopt the 4-year phasing schedules for parks, general government, and water that are in the impact fee study. And you could adopt the sewer and the new stormwater fees at 100% or whatever percentage the city desires. With extraordinary circumstances, you could adopt the parks, general government, and water fees at 100% or less, or you could adopt them at less than 100% initially and increase the percentage over several years. But you would not be able to make any change to any phased increase for sewer and stormwater because you don't have an extraordinary circumstances analysis for those facilities. So basically, you adopt them at less than 100%, you need to wait 4 years before you can increase those fees at all. Okay, well that concludes my presentation. I will mute my phone for now and listen to the live stream because I can hear you better on the live stream.
Okay, should we request for an answer or something, you are available then? You will still be available to answer any questions from any of the members of the commission here tonight?
He's still on the phone. I think he muted himself.
No, I know. I'm waiting for the delay.
Clancy, the chairperson has asked, will you be available to address any questions if the commissioners have concerning your presentation in the impact fee study?
Yeah, the answer is yes, I'm staying on the line.
Oh, okay, thank you, sir. We understand the delay. Thank you for being patient with us, too. No problem. At this point, we're going to open up the public hearing. The public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to address this may come forward. We see no one here in the audience or anyone is present to comment on this. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Discussion is now open to the members of the Planning Commission. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Mr. Seyfried down at the very end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's start this with a really simple, basic question. We make the assumption that this passes, it's approved, the council votes on it, it becomes the law of the land. I own a single-family home, I want to put on a bathroom. How much am I paying in fees?
Did you hear that question, Clancy?
No, I didn't hear it.
All right, let's try that again.
I believe I have it, Mr.
Go
Seyfried.
ahead.
And of course, you correct me where I may be wrong. So Mr. Mullen, Mr. Seyfried has requested if he owns a single-family home, and if these fees are adopted at 100% by mayor and council, and he wanted to renovate his bathroom, add a bathroom to his single-family home, do you have an idea how much his fees, his building fees will be?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It wouldn't have any effect on the fees. The fees are still per dwelling unit, so there wouldn't be any increase.
So what would be the fee?
I think the answer is that the building unit already exists. So the fee applies to new dwelling units, not additions to existing units.
Oh, well, that's not bad.
Yeah, again, it's not the construction cost or for home improvements. This is strictly for any new development that comes to us and not existing element, unless they
Clancy,
want to.
confirm that.
Now-
That is in the actual title.
Right, okay, yes. Yeah, I did see that. You are correct on that.
So the only way I would be impacted on this would be if I bulldozed the house and started over.
That's correct.
Otherwise,
Well,
okay.
So,
maybe if you leave the
if-
foundation, then it would fall under home renovations, and then it would
So-
not be a new development.
So Clancy, if I may, to even further that question, if a single-family home was to add a bedroom, would they have any impact fee increase?
No.
No.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Bob, good evening, sir. You have the floor.
A very thorough presentation. I think it's all, sorry. A very thorough presentation. I think it's all pretty straightforward. I have no comment.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. McDermott?
Yeah, the only question I have, Well, first off, going back to Mr. Seyfried's question, obviously, if he put a new bathroom or bedroom on, he would be increasing his usage, correct? So therefore, he would be subject to the new fees, correct?
It's not part of the new development. It's not a new development. So we already have fees that one would pay for renovation that already exist.
Right.
This impact fee does not impact that, such as if I come in and want to renovate my interior of my house, it's not impacting that. But if I wanted to build a new home, build a new commercial building, build a new multifamily residential, it will have an impact.
Okay,
Okay, again, we're stressing that it's new development.
right.
Anyone coming in, they face it. With existing developments that are in the pipeline, they had started to develop, or once they start the development, if this is adopted, these fees would immediately be in place, correct?
Well, after the delay,
Yeah,
after, whenever the effective date is.
right, the effective
which is
date.
90 days after adoption.
Correct,
After notice of adoption.
correct. Okay. Do you understand that?
Yeah, oh, no, I'm clear on it.
Okay.
The way that this all was calculated on an older study, as you mentioned?
Clancy, can you clarify that again? Because as he stated during his presentation, Mr. McDermott, is that we did not have the old study as the foundation of the new so he did his calculations based on, Clancy, you speak to that, because I don't want to misquote you.
Right, because I had asked you the
It-
methodology.
It's the old fees that are based on the old study. There's a new study for the new fees
And when was the new study done?
this year,
This year? Okay.
right?
Yes, that's correct. As he stated, he was employed this year. We have a year that we need to execute this, or we have to do the study over again.
Dr. Basson?
Dr. Besson, I'll come to,
Could you ask Clancy how he used, I believe he used a consumer price index in making these adjustments? If I am correct, could he explain how he used that CPI and over what period of time?
Derek, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hold up my,
it's to the mic. They can hear you.
okay. Yeah, no, I mean, we didn't base the study on the changes in the CPI. The changes it's just a way to explain why the fees are changing. And we can't really do that very well because, we don't have the studies. Except for water and sewer, we do have those. So it's not the basis of the study, though. The study is based on your existing facilities, the value of those facilities, the current value of those facilities, versus how much existing development you have that's using those facilities, and that establishes your level of service. So we're basing it on that. We're not basing it on changes in the CPI or changes from the last study. It's just supplementary analysis that we could do if we had that information, but we can't really explain why things have changed, why the studies have changed, because we don't really know what the current fee, the studies that the current fees are based on. We don't have those. Anyway,
perhaps if
I
I
hope that
could,
answers your question.
my take is that property values will increase. Once the new development comes in, let's say that property value increases, well then that amount of increase will be a factor in anybody coming in after that, you know, let's say the development's been around for 5 years, that value has increased. A new property of the same nature, let's say a development of the same nature, their impact fee will be most likely increased because of the increase in the cost over that 5-year period. Is that a good way to look at it? So we have to use on the assumption that there's going to be increase in cost for the city to operate for service, then we adjust that impact fee to cover that cost.
Not if the facility exists. It could, if it runs at 100%, you're able to accommodate increased usage, so to speak, as we build more units and so on. Why would that cost more? If it can run up to 100% with current staffing. So what you're meaning is, I assume what you're meaning is that it's going to cost more to run the facility as we bring online more and more units.
That's my take on this.
Impact fees are dealing with the incremental increase as a result of new units.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for the answer.
Ms. Blumer? Do you have a comment, ma'am?
As I'm looking at the increases, my only concern is whether or not these increases will solely affect those coming to do business with the city. Will these increases impact residents in any way, shape, or form?
My understanding is they're designed to be implemented through the issuance of building permits for new construction. So unless existing residents are undertaking new construction, it wouldn't affect them.
So, for example, a new construction would mean if they're doing anything within their own home and they would
No,
No.
new development.
so this is 100% only new development for those coming to do business
I
with the
believe
city?
so, yes.
It's new development impact fees.
Only?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, out of idle curiosity, I'm looking at section 3-1407, imposition of impact fee. So, under housing type, a single dwelling unit would have a fee of $5,874. And then you look at land use type, single family, that has a fee of $2,657. Are those two fees cumulative or are they separate?
It's two different fees. One is for parks and the other is for general government.
Well,
It's explained on page 2 of the extraordinary circumstances analysis.
well, I'm not on page 2.
No, so if you see there's a subheading above the 5874, there's a capital A, Park and Recreation Impact Fee Schedule, and then above the 2657, there's capital B, General Government Impact Fee Schedule. Those are two different impact fees.
So they're cumulative.
Yes.
Yes.
And so the water and sewer fee would be over $9,000.
Yes.
The sewer impact fee would be another $1,700. So you're talking almost $20,000 in fees to build a new single-family home on a vacant lot.
Yes, that's correct.
Just want to be sure I really understand that. That's,
Yeah.
it just strikes me as a huge amount of money for a single-family unit. And I don't know that this covers all the fees. These are just some of the big ones.
Actually, mobility fee would be in addition to those.
So there's another fee that hasn't yet been tacked in.
Correct.
So we're easily looking at $20,000 to build a single-family home on a vacant lot. Or if the existing home is bulldozed and they start over, they'd be spending some $20,000 at least in fees. Okay.
So, so that.
I'm
me-
not going to speak to that circumstance. I haven't looked at that.
I just want to be clear because to his point, if I am a homeowner and I make the decision to take down my home and build a new one, do I now,
You build it into your mortgage and pay it out over 30 years.
right, so it's not just for those that are developers, it's for anyone who would develop a home, and that can actually be a current resident.
Does it apply to people who are demolishing their home and rebuilding?
That is happening every day in North Miami. There are people who are purchasing lots, there are people who are,
There are developers who are purchasing lots and who are building homes, and they understand that there's going to be impact fees associated with that construction
but it's not
development.
just, Mr. Cook, with all due respect, it is not just developers. There are individuals who purchase lots and build upon it. And my question earlier, if this is would this affect an individual property owner?
So I think your question has, yes, ma'am.
So this is an update to the actual fees. So this isn't something that's a new impact. Any existing resident is currently paying these fees. It's currently still applied. It's not like we're I just wanted you guys to know that they're already paying this. This isn't a new imposition of an impact fee. What this is an update to the existing fee that residents are currently paying. And to Mr. Cook's point, we don't generally, when we're talking about impact fees,
Consider,
we don't really, it's usually not the normal resident that's coming in that's getting the impact fee assessed. Who you're seeing this apply to is new developers. The people that are coming before you for your conditional use permits, that's really what this is geared towards. But just so you know, that this is currently in effect, it's currently applied. This is just an update to the fee that's already there and established.
Okay, I also have if you look at the definition of new development, which is on this, okay, well, it's under definitions. It's section 3-1405. So I'll just read it. New development shall mean the carrying out of any building activity, make of any material change in the use of a structure or land, the installation of a water meter, or the making of a connection. Here's the important language. That generates demand for capital facilities and equipment over and above the previously existing documented use of the development site. So if you're going to double the size of your home, it'll be incremental increase of the size of that home that is subject to the impact fee, not the entire home.
And if I may, just a different perspective. Let's say if I came in here, and just to give you an example, this is not specific to impact fees, but it's just give you a perspective on how development can work. If I'm a single-family home owner, and I came in to use Mr. Hill's example, and I increased my property by more than 50% of the value, I have to bring that whole house into current standard. That means it has to raise to meet the floodplain standards and all that. And that is a cost. So in that perspective, when you're talking about even increasing like the level of service, you're increasing your house to a point that it's going to trigger new service impact on the city, then there's going to be a fee associated with that.
thank you.
I have a question.
yes, sir. Mr. Held?
So, Derek and Clancy, I'm trying to understand the 100% rule. And if you look at page 2 of the extraordinary circumstances analysis, table 1, it has the updated non-utility fees related to parks and general government. And the ones for general government are like 174%, 217%, 581%. But those numbers that are in the updated fees are the ones that are in the ordinance. So how does that relate to the 100% cap on the increase in the fees?
Clancy, did you hear that? Okay.
I'd be happy to do it again, or just talk to him. Hey Clancy, it's Gary Held. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay, good. So in the extraordinary circumstances analysis, under Table 1, there's the updated fees for parks and general government, and then there's a percent change in general government. And the percent in change in the general government fees runs 174%, 217%, 581%. And those same general government fees are the ones that are included in the ordinance itself under the general government impact fee schedule. So I'm trying to understand how those percentages relate to the 100% fee cap that you previously talked about.
Table 2 in the extraordinary needs analysis. Did I hear that correctly?
That's correct.
I mean, Table 2 just compares the current fee for a single-family home to the updated fee for the smallest meter. And that shows the increase, so I'm not sure what the question is.
No, so if you go to the non-utility fees in Table 1, the first line
Table
is
1.
single-family detached / attached. And that's the updated land use type. If you go across, the current fee, general government, is $970, right? And then you go
Right.
further, the updated fee is $2,657. And the
Right.
chart says that change is 174%.
Right.
How does that relate to the 100% limit on the increase in fees that are allowed?
There's no 100% limit, it's 100% over, it's 50% over 4 years with phasing. It's not a 100% increase, it's getting them to 100%. If you increase them to 100% immediately without phasing, that fee would go up 174%. And the point I'm making in the analysis about the single-family fee is increasing, the increase could be accounted for by the 85% increase in building cost generally, and the 100% increase that would be required to make up for the fact that they were adopted at 50%. That would be 185% increase. Those two things. I'm just saying those two things could account for the change all by themselves for single family.
Well, the $581 fee you said is under retail and commercial, which is also a huge amount of cost for redevelopment or bringing in new business to the community. And the hold on, sir. Yeah. Well, okay, we'll give you a minute. If I,
Yes, ma'am, you may. 'Cause I think,
Okay. So the question that we're seeking additional clarification is, the 100% language that we talk about with the extraordinary circumstances analysis, is that considered a cap, meaning that we can only increase the fees up to 100%? Or are we talking about that 100% whether or not, is that 100% related to the amount of the new fee and how that's phased in, and how we implement the new fee?
Yes, it relates to the percentage of the new fee. So 100% would be adopting the updated fees at 100% immediately without phasing. Or would take you that long to get to 100%.
Get it now?
Okay,
So you
does that
set,
answer your question?
so you set the fee, and if you're adopting at 100% of that fee,
You need to have the extraordinary fees analysis.
okay.
Got it?
So it's not a percentage, these percentages don't relate to the 100%. It's two different things,
Two different analyses.
apples and oranges.
Correct.
Okay.
basically what that is, then, can we assume that those high numbers are if the fees, if we don't adopt, that's what we're faced with? Is that correct to assume that, then?
No, still
No?
apples and oranges.
Okay,
So
I think that's where we have some confusion.
So
that we need to
Mr.
get-
Mullen has done a great job at getting you an impact fee update study. And so he's gone in his presentation about how he's come up with these new fees. So you already have these new fees. They're already laid out. This extra analysis that we're asking you to consider is the extraordinary circumstances analysis. And what that analysis is asking you to consider is whether you're going to adopt these new fees in the study at 100%, or whether or not those fees would be coming in on a phased-in schedule.
So you're asking us.
You get what I'm
to-
saying?
I got it
To accept the 100%
Right,
fee plan, we'll call that a plan, the plan
Correct.
before us.
okay.
And that's what we will be voting on.
Correct.
Does everyone on the panel
Yep, got it now.
have agreement on that or understand that? Mr. Seifried? Mr. Besson?
As best as we can make it.
All right. Okay. All right, so we've got the question answered, sir. And I have nothing to add to that. I think I've already made some of the points. Any other comment before I ask for a motion on this item? None?
All right, I move adoption.
Okay, Mr. Seifried has moved for adoption. Do I have a second on the motion?
Second,
Seconded by Mr. McDermott. We will do a roll call on this. We'll begin with Mr. Seifried.
Yes.
Mr. Seifried is yes. Mr. Bob?
Yes.
Mr. Bob is yes. Ms. Blamur?
Yes.
Ms. Blamur, yes. Mr. Besson, Dr. Besson
Yes.
is yes for Dr. Besson. Mr. McDermott?
yes.
Yes for Mr. McDermott, and Chairman Ernst is a yes. So the item has moved, and we thank Mr. Cook and Mr. Mullen for your input, sir. Thank you very much for your clarifications on some of the items, and also to our staff for helping us finally come to a resolution on this.
Happy to do it.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to the second item on tonight's agenda, and that is make sure that I've got all the correct language here. Nothing's changed on this. Madam Secretary, did you say that there was a change on this ordinance, or that the ordinance that we have before us in the printed form is correct, I'm about to read?
Yes, staff has consulted with your board attorney, and we have already made some changes which will be stated on the record.
Okay.
And then, of course, anything additional that comes out of deliberation tonight will also be added.
Okay, very good. I'm going to go ahead and read into the record then, PC 1796. This is an ordinance of the mayor and the city council of the city of North Miami, Florida, amending chapter 29 of the city of North Miami Code of Ordinances entitled Land Development Regulations, specifically Article 5 entitled Development Standards, Sections 5-1611, to allow ice cream trucks to operate within the city limits subject to certain standards in accordance with Section 166.041, parentheses C, and parentheses 3, and parentheses C. Florida Statutes 2024, Sections 3-1004 through 3-1007, and Section 3-302 of the City of North Miami Code of Ordinances, Chapter 29, entitled Land Development Regulations, providing for repeal, conflict, severability, codification, and for effective date. And may we have staff report, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. Derek Cook with the Development Services Department. As stated by Mr. Chair, the item before you is a text amendment to the land development regulations specific to mobile food dispensing vehicle ice cream trucks. This request is to modify the LDRs to allow for a mobile food dispensing vehicle ice cream truck to operate throughout the city. This is a citywide element. The context and intent. On September the 28th in 2021, the city adopted an ordinance number 1469 establishing uniform regulations to allow the operation of mobile food dispensing vehicles within the city consistent with the preemption provided in State Statute Section 509.102. Currently, except through the temporary use permit process, motor food dispensing vehicles as an accessory use are limited to the M1 industrial area and the C1 commercial area at a mechanic car wash establishment. The intent of this is to establish a land use and zoning regulation for real property upon which a mobile food dispensing vehicle and to support additional entrepreneurial opportunities within the city. So as part of our review, staff does an analysis based on the Land Development Regulations, Article 3, Section 3-1004 of the LDRs. And you have several items that we look at here. The first one will be whether the amendment promotes public health, safety, and welfare. So, as you can see, the amendment does change the adopted regulations governing mobile food dispensing vehicles by allowing ice cream trucks to run within the jurisdiction limits of the city. However, the amendment also institutes parameters which requires the vendor operating in a manner to avoid traffic conflict, congestion, protection of public safety, and does not distract from the aesthetics of the city. And then the ordinance, if you would go to Section 5-1611 and go under C, which is ice cream truck operations generally, we have a list of items that we will require of a person who's seeking to operate an ice cream truck within the city, which is you have to have a business tax receipt, a certificate of use. We will do background checks for criminal history, including sexual conduct offenders and things to that effect. We also will have it that the person cannot have a violation of driving while under influence, recklessly within the last 3 years. And additionally, A person cannot have those violations more than 3 times within the lifetime to be able to operate one of these vehicles within the city. So those are some of the elements that will be, as part of this legislation, to help with maintaining the safety and security and health of our community and not have an adverse impact on the community. Whether the amendment permits uses the comprehensive land use plan prohibits in areas affected by zoning map change or text. This is not a text amendment that has impact on changing the land use or the zoning of our city. C, whether the amendment allows density or intensity to exceed the density and intensity which is permitted within the city. This does not. This just allows for the use of a mobile food dispensing vehicle, specifically ice cream truck, to operate within the city and not to be isolated in one place. They can roam the city. D, whether the amendment causes a decline in the level of services for public infrastructure, which is subject to concurrency requirements, to a level of service which is less than the minimum requirements of the comprehensive plan. It doesn't. As you know, mobile trucks are their own autonomous. They have their own water and things that are associated within the truck. They're not pulling from our actual level of services. One of the concerns that you would have as part of the level of services is that we are looking at as the traffic, and we want to avoid that. And that, if you're using the word of our roadways, that is part of our level of services. E, whether the amendment directly conflicts with goals, objectives, or policies of the comprehensive land use. This amendment does not conflict with the comprehensive plan. Rather, it implements the primary intention of the comprehensive plan, which is to contribute to the economic sustainability and to protect the public health and safety and welfare of our community. F, whether the amendment furthers the orderly development of the city of North Miami. The amendment will allow for the city to continue to provide land use and operational controls over mobile food dispensing vehicles to ensure avoidance of traffic conflicts and congestion, protection of the aesthetic beauty and attractiveness of the surrounding streetscape and properties, and protect the health and safety of our community. So during our discussion with our board attorney and our city attorney, we have some edits that we want to implement as part of this legislation. And the edits start at section 5-1611, the mobile food dispensing vehicle, including this ice cream trucks, that is underlined. That is a new term.
Derek, you need to underline including too.
And underline including. Within the definition, which is also under section 5-1611, B, definitions. Within that definition, we had to make some changes. The original language was ice cream trucks. These vehicles vend only prepackaged frozen fruit, dairy or frozen water-based food products, soft-serve or hand-dipped frozen dairy or frozen water-based food products, and prepackaged beverages and snacks.
So, are you striking soft serve?
Yes. So per the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, soft serve is not permitted through mobile ice cream trucks.
Oh. Okey-doke.
So as you can see, my changes are we striking through only, we strike through soft serve, I strike through or frozen food-based food product, because looked to me that we had mentioned that twice in this definition, so it's been redundant. So that's that. And the third element that we
Okay,
had,
I'm sorry, I'm trying to, this is under definition B, in case.
definition B, yes, sir.
Okay, so again, show us where you're striking. Again, give us the language that is stricken.
Okay, so under definition B, for ice cream trucks, we're striking only in that definition. We're striking soft serve,
Okay,
and I'm striking or frozen water-based food products is a repeat term.
okay. May continue, sir.
And then under 3, in vending, this is also in section 5:1611. You go to 3, vending. A, all ice cream must be pre-wrapped, sealed, labeled, and obtained from an approved source as determined by the applicable regulatory agency. Example given, Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services.
That will be language added to that.
That would be added.
All right. Everybody got that? Okay,
That's it.
that's the
Except
only
for,
changes?
except for Mr. Hill has element that he would like to add.
Yes, sir.
Well, there's the one we discussed about fixing the sentence that starts operational standards,
Okay.
which I texted you yesterday. So the old subsection D, the new subsection 3 that says operational standards, it reads now, the following operational standards shall apply to all MFDVs operating with the city, whether long-term or as part of a special event approved under a temporary use permit. But it doesn't explain what happens. So we're adding, if you'll agree, violation of which shall subject the vendor to revocation of business tax receipt and/or certificate of use and temporary use permit.
And that'll fall under which, under D,
It's-
under
It's the
MFDD
introductory
standards.
language to A through T.
It's introductory language.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody have that? Understand?
Agreed. We discussed it yesterday.
Yes, that was oversight on my part. My apologies.
That's okay.
So with that, that is the edits that we will have introduced to move forward. And if you have any others that you would like to implement, that we also include as part of the modification. Our next step on this matter is that you have first reading. It's anticipated for the 24th of September. Second reading is anticipated for October the 9th, but that is still to be determined. And then it will become effective, if adopted, 10 days after adoption. And that's the end of my presentation.
Very good. And just for the record now, I have to open up the public hearing. Just for the record, the public hearing is now open. Chair recognizes that there is no one in the audience to speak on the item or coming forth, so I will go ahead and close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed, and I'll open up the discussion to the commission. Mr. McDermott, I'd like for you to go ahead and start us off, sir.
Okay. To begin with, I have nothing against ice cream trucks. I love them. However, there is a reason why they are confined to the industrial area. Several years ago, many years ago actually, we had a little crisis in the North Miami in that we had unlicensed ice cream trucks traveling through the city. And the unfortunate part was they were going 5 miles an hour with extremely loud music going on, bells, songs, etc. We're a very working class community. And we have hardworking people here who work 2 or 3 jobs, some of them. And to be wakened up if you're on an evening shift and you're trying to get rest during the day, it's really hard to be wakened up by some noise outside your window, traveling at 5 miles an hour down your street. So what happened was the police started enforcing the fact that they were not licensed, and they went away. Now they're coming back. Have no objections to them at all. But I think there needs to be some kind of caveat that they cannot be playing any kind of attraction noises that are going to disturb the hardworking citizens of this city. I mean, it just, as I said, it was a little crisis back in the day. Because as I said, we have hardworking people here. A lot of them work, you know, split shifts, double shifts, triple shifts, and I have sincere respect for them for the fact that they do that to make lives better for themselves and their families. I really appreciate them for the dedication and the hard work that they put in. I don't want to put any onuses on them, and, you know, I think rather than start something that we may regret later, that perhaps maybe we need to put something on there that tells them they cannot play noise and et cetera, and of any kind, you know, to obviously to try to attract attention to themselves. That's all I have.
Now, what was addressed, there were noise factors addressed
It is.
in the ordinance
yes.
that you're asking us to adopt. But, Ms. McDermott, do you think that those are
Yes.
not enough?
I don't think they're enough, no.
All right.
I think if you look at the proposed ordinance, it gives you 2 options to consider. One would be a ban, meaning they wouldn't be allowed to have any kind of music. And then the other option to consider is that they would be allowed to have music, but that it could not be audible at a distance exceeding 500 feet.
Yeah, well, the problem with this, the problem with that second one is, you know, who's going to enforce it? You know, you say, okay, I mean, listen, I think if you live in, at least in my neighborhood, we are supposed to have certain times at which loud music does not, you know, is over. We have ordinances that, you know, as to how loud it can be. Those are violated every single weekend. So again, it's enforcement. I think we need to have a ban because who's going to enforce it? That's the problem. We have our police department is doing a wonderful job, but they're very undermanned. Our code enforcement is doing a good job. They're undermanned. So who's going to be the enforcement tool? And as we all know, people will, you know, will get away with what they can get away with. So I think we need a ban. I think that's the option.
Basically, what you're saying is a ban regardless of any wording in the ordinances that would prohibit noise or them going throughout any neighborhood that they please.
Yeah.
It's a total ban, you're asking for a total ban on ice cream trucks as it stands now, correct?
No. Ice cream trucks are fine. We just need to ban the noise.
The noise only.
Yeah, so I have
Yes,
a
sir.
question. So, assuming vehicles travel in and out of city limits, and the surrounding jurisdictions do not prohibit noise, having a ban on a device limits them from doing it both inside and outside the city. So is,
No, the ban would
No.
only be within North
No,
Miami.
I think the way I understand, and I'm not an expert on the ice cream operation business, but obviously they're going to be coming into the city to get their CU and their BTR, and they're going to have to know the standards that are applicable with the city because we're going to be doing their background. So part of it is knowing that when they pull into the city of North Miami, that their devices have to come off, otherwise. And I'm not sure if the enforcement will be through neighborhood services development or the police department. I'll defer to Mr. Cook on that. But I will tell you that staff is also torn on what, you know, because there is the business model. This is part of the business model for ice cream trucks, but there is the nuisance aspect of it. And that's why we have given you two options to consider. And we would, appreciate that feedback so that when we present it to mayor and council, we can let them know what your recommendation is on that. But no, I don't expect them to remove the device. I would expect that when they're traveling in the city of North Miami, they would know to turn off their devices that are
That's not the way
audible.
it's written, though.
I'm happy to any changes in the language.
Okay, anything else you want to add to that? 'Cause I
No,
want to hear from
But
somebody
there
else. 'Cause
are other cities that have banned the noise. Yes, there are
And
other
still
cities that
allow
have
the-
done that,
yeah.
that do not allow the noise.
Right.
So,
No,
so the question would be, do you not permit them to use their device, or they're not permitted to have a device on the truck?
Not to use it. If they can use it somewhere else, fine. As I say, I'm not against ice cream trucks. I'm just trying to prevent what I know has transpired before.
okay, so your position is, let's not have an ordinance allowing them to to roam our street. Basically, you're not allowing them to be, to conduct business in the city of North Miami.
No, to not make
No, no,
noise
no.
while
That's
they're
what I-
conducting business.
Okay, but they could still roam, you're fine
Oh,
with
they
them?
can still roam whatever they want.
Okay, yeah, I just
You know,
wanna
we
make-
just don't
get
want to
that-
have a recreation of a issue
No, I
that,
understand. Yeah,
Yeah.
me too. I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just trying to see if.
but otherwise they can do whatever they want to do.
And then I think we need to look at the fact that the enforceability of this ordinance, which could be problematic, as to who would have the enforcement responsibility or the legal responsibility to enforce this. Can code enforcement stop them? Can the police department stop them? That's what we need to.
It could be either, and it would be really an operational decision by the city as to which of its resources it wants to dedicate towards the problem. It is a code violation, so it is certainly enforceable by Neighborhood Services Department, but it is also a nuisance. Noise is a nuisance, which is also enforceable by the police department. So I think it will have to be an operational decision by the city as to which resources they want to dedicate towards it, because either department could enforce it.
Now, taking that a further step, would there be a warning system, or would it be an immediate citation for a violation?
Again, that would be an operational decision. It would be,
And if you have, again, it's back to enforcement. If you say, well, you're going to get a warning, well, who's going to,
I know, but that works real well with Uber, by the way.
it doesn't work.
Having to
It
deal with
doesn't
them at
work.
events, and you tell Uber, they'll eat the fine and continue,
Yeah.
so,
yeah, but from a legal standpoint, we could, it would be an operational decision again. If you recall the red light camera citations, when we first implemented that, there was a time period for a certain period of time where everybody got courtesy warning notices that
Right,
were
grace
caught on the
period.
camera. But then there was a effective date where everybody got the real tickets, right?
right.
So that's certainly something that the city administration could consider, whether or not they want to implement it in a similar manner to kind of have a warning system ahead of time.
Well, and I would suggest that that every vendor it would be their responsibility to know the outline of our city limits so that they can't say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was in North Miami because I was just in North Miami Beach and I didn't know that I'm now in North Miami or Biscayne Park because all the communities are so tightly knit and also the unincorporated areas that surround us.
Yeah,
So,
if
you know,
they're designing a route, they know.
They know, right?
They know.
So they
They're
can't
designing a
use that
route, they-
excuse,
Yeah.
and, as a part of the enforcement, they cannot use that excuse that they did not know that they are with our city. But I would think it would also behoove the city to have that as a part of when they go in to get their paperwork done and the permit to do this, that they understand that there's a zero tolerance for not understanding the, city
Again,
limits.
to the attorney, it's operational how you would like to have it. We've given you the option I think it's also important as part of the element that the operation hours that we are stating is from 10 a.m. to sunset.
Right. I saw some of the other ones, you know, I'm fine with all those restrictions. The noise factor is something that we've seen in the past, and it was really tough to enforce. And you know, if we raise the standard for toleration standard, so to speak, we might be able to make this work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my opinion. You know, the floor is open for, you know, for further discussion here. Mr. Seyfried, Chair recognizes you if you have anything to add to this, sir.
Well, you know, I take this with a certain bit of humor. When I was knee-high to a grasshopper, which was a very long time ago, we had ice cream trucks in the city, and they've come and gone. But as a, I hate to use the word senior citizen, but nonetheless, I find the current noise to be very annoying. But the problem is enforcement and how you can't expect an ice cream truck to attract attention if it doesn't make noise. That's how, as children, we knew the ice cream truck was coming down the street. I think maybe we could cut back the 500 feet to something less, because my yard, for example, is 100 feet deep, so we take that times 5, it's almost a full city block, oddly. Certainly, you know, we cover the distance of 4 to 5 houses. I think if we could come up with something a little less onerous, maybe 250 feet, but then you do have the enforcement problem. What kind of device or standard is going to be upheld in the courts?
But Mr. Seifert, if it's 250 square feet, you're still going to affect every single house on the block.
Well, yes, you will ultimately affect the homes.
Yeah,
But
because the vehicle is moving.
yeah,
So
Exactly.
that's moving sound, and that just multiplies the nuisance. I mean,
yeah.
Look,
I can, for me, listen, I'm gone during most of the day. It doesn't impact me, but I can just tell you the phone calls that I got back in the day when this became a real big issue, and of course, you know, was wound up only in the industrial area. And the phone calls that I got, the volume of phone calls I got back then, just told me that this was really negatively impacting the residents, particularly the residents that are probably the ones doing the 2 and 3 job shifts kind of thing. You know, so I don't think there's any way around trying to muffle it because of, or retrograde the distance factor because of the fact that 250 feet, 100 feet, you're in the middle of the street, you're going to still impact both homes on either side of the street. And people know, people understand when trucks come down the street. People, you know, after a little while of orientation, they'll get to understand when it comes and what time. So, you know, that's just my comment on it.
Well, I have mixed feelings on this for a lot of good reasons. I don't want to see us put a small business owner out of business before they get started, because an ice cream truck has to make noise to attract the children, for better or worse. And I understand where Mike is coming from. I have found that noise to be objectionable as I've gotten older. And so, I agree with the need to regulate, but when we do this, the sound is an issue, and we have to have a clear, enforceable standard that's not going to require a whole lot of technical training and enforcement to make the judgment call. And so I'm thinking, what kind of device would measure the sound from what distance? And how many of those would we have to buy in order to ensure enforceability?
That's why no sound works better.
Well, yes, I concur. No sound would be ideal for some of us, but then it would be disastrous for the ice cream truck vendor,
Well,
because how else do they announce their presence?
Well, it seems to work in other cities that have banned them.
Well, you know, I'd sure like to know what cities and what the impact has been. The fact that there's no member of the public commenting on this, I am frankly reluctant to see this go forward until we can get some more definitive answers on how a noise ordinance could be enforced. I agree with the sense to regulate to an extent, although certainly they weren't regulated when I was growing up.
would you entertain the thought of moving this item or moving this item or to another
I would,
discussion?
because as I look at this, Charlie, Mr. Chair, I see an enforcement problem. We don't want to make it, set a standard that then can't be enforced in the courts. Pointless to pick a rule that you can't stick. So if we're going to set this up, we need to have a clear enforcement vehicle. And I don't know what kind of gadgets are out there that would measure sound. So I would want to hear some expert testimony on the gadgets that would measure the sound.
Certainly, we don't want to look at the prospect of having an ice cream catcher out there roaming the neighborhood on our, on our payroll to look for violating ice cream trucks.
Well, yeah, that's,
You know, I mean, that-
Permission to respond or to?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, so, through the chair, as a prior prosecutor of code enforcement violations from the city, what I can tell you is that when I first started here as a prosecutor, we had decibels. Decibels were the standard.
Yeah.
And we had decibel measuring devices.
Yes.
And the issues we ran into with enforcement of that was, are these devices calibrated? Are the officers properly trained on the decibels? And so what the trend has been in cities is to get away from this decibel standard for prosecution and go to a distance measured standard. And that's why you have the 500 feet. Because it's easier to measure distance and say, well, the officer, as you said, it's a block away, right, 500 feet. If the officer can hear it audible at that distance, that's much easier to prosecute and enforce versus decibel standards. It would obviously take the officer being familiar with his territory, with his area, to know what 500 feet looks like. Certainly a city block looks different than a suburban block, so certainly would require some training, but I don't think that we'd have issues with enforcement. We certainly haven't from the noise perspective when we look at a distance standard. Where we do have issues is that decibel measuring standard. Because the device issue that Chairman Seafried raised, that certainly does get to be an issue with prosecution, but not so much with a distance standard.
Well, based on that, I can accept the logic of the distance standard as opposed to decibel, because I can see if you attack it from a volume perspective, it would be like trying to enforce on these radar guns, where you have endless expert testimony where every operator of a radar gun has to be qualified, you've got to prove it was calibrated, you go through all these steps before you get to the issue of whether or not the guy driving the car was actually going 110 miles an hour. That somehow never gets into the picture. So, yeah, I can accept the distance issue, and I'm in sympathy with Mike's feelings that, God, that music can be terribly annoying, particularly when they play the same bars over and over and over again. You just pull your hair out with that noise.
Let's hear from somebody, from everybody. And
Yeah,
then-
because
and
I
then
don't have an
think-
answer on this one.
Yeah, let's hear from everybody, and then we'll try to get a consensus out as to whether or not we want to continue this item, further discussion, or, you know, I don't want to do that just yet until we hear from everybody and let them speak on behalf or against the proposal. Mr. Bob?
I mean, honestly, you know, the city sounds are city sounds. So my view on it is, you know, the ice cream truck, that music is like really kind of a staple of a regular summer day. And I mean, you know, if we're gonna let ice cream trucks come in, but then the main way they generate traffic is, you know, restricted, we're kind of setting them up for failure, because as a kid, the only way I knew was hearing the sound, and then you go outside and, you know, you kind of get used to it. But if they're driving in silence, I mean, if you happen to be outside, then you'll be able to, you know, take advantage of it. And I mean, and if the purpose of it is to assist small businesses and entrepreneurs that are coming in with that type of business, then, you know, you want to put them in the best position to succeed. So with that being said, I'm not of the view that it's like carte blanche where you just, you know, blast the music as loud as you want with no restrictions. I think, you know, the distance in place makes sense. Maybe we cut it down a bit if possible. I think really more so if the noise is an issue, it's more so the time frame, because sunset during the months of from spring to the fall, the sun doesn't set till like, you know, almost 8 o'clock. So that would be more of a concern than the noise itself, because then you're gonna have that music playing around 7:30 when, you know, most people are home, you know, winding down from a workday. But overall, that's really kind of my view on it. I think they should be allowed to play the music if they're gonna come in, but maybe we cut down the 500, maybe we cut it down a little bit more, and then enforcement doesn't appear to be an issue. There are ways around that, so that's my thought.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Blumer?
As a business owner, I see both sides, so it's a bit difficult. I grew up hearing ice cream trucks, and the music did draw me out, as both commissioners stated on my left. And, you know, I understand Commissioner McDermott's position, especially when he was here when it was a chronic issue. So you have experience, right? He experienced it, and you have, you know, individuals like myself who would like to see a balance. So where's the balance? If you absolutely say no music, there's no balance there. You know, if someone is outside, they get to purchase ice cream because they see it. If they're not outside, they miss them. I think the number one consumer for ice cream is children. And the minute they hear it, they start to tug on their mom and dad and say, hey, the ice cream man is coming. Let's go. I want some ice cream. So how do we strike a balance, monitor it, and if it is not adhered to, then ban it? Give them an opportunity to run their business as effective and efficiently as possible, giving them the benefit of the doubt, but if they don't adhere to it, then we ban it.
Okay, Mr. Bob, sir? Or Dr. Besson? Getting late, sorry.
I remember growing up in New York City, the Good Humor truck would come around. And the only way you would know the truck comes around is because you would hear the music. 500 feet is a pretty good distance because the trucks haven't come around in my neighborhood recently, but you would hear them coming up one street down and then up the other street, and you kind of knew ahead you had 3 or 5 minutes to get out there. So maybe we should consider the distance. The other thing is from sunrise to sunset. If you go to timeanddate.com, you will find that there is a calculator for night, nautical twilight, astronomical twilight, civil twilight, and so on. So maybe we need to go and further delineate what the what sunset means, because it's 4 or 5 different things. It's another consideration. Last consideration is in the ice cream that's kept in the truck, who is the agency that would make sure that the freezers are running at proper temperature? Would it be, I don't,
It's not, they're governed through
Are they
the
governed by
the
something
state.
else?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the same as like your restaurants. They have the same
okay,
food inspection process
great.
as a restaurant.
So that's not our headache.
Right. No. I think our main concern right now with this is the noise. And I think that's where everybody is pretty much in agreement that it's a noise problem that we need to address, or either, now we have the option of banning it, or we have the option of allowing the distance factor be a part of this ordinance. Is that pretty much
Mr.
clear
Chairman,
with everybody? Yes, sir.
in trying to strike a balance, how about 100 feet? That will reach both sides of a normal residential street.
From one spot, from the distance where the truck is presently
From the middle of the street.
from the middle of the street, but as he's moving along, that 100 feet changes to the next 100 feet. To the
Well,
next.
no, it's on either side as it goes down the street.
Yeah, but you can hear it ahead of you and you can hear it behind you too, so.
Well, as I say, trying to
the
strike a
person-
balance.
The person,
In trying to strike a balance, I mean, even if you want to do 50 feet, you're still going to hear it, but it's
Right.
obviously going to be a lot less.
yeah. Well,
I mean, if you said
I
50
understand what
feet,
you're, now, I understand what you're saying. The ability to hear that is restricted. This is what we're considering. In other words, if you're currently down the street more than 100 feet, you're not going to be bothered to it until it's within 100
till it's
feet
within
of your
100 feet of
property.
you, yes, exactly.
So, I mean, that's understandable. Is everybody kind of yes, sir?
So I tried to do a Google search on cities in Florida regulating noise of ice cream trucks. And it does say that Coral Gables considered an ordinance in 2022. I have not been able to determine the result. But some ideas that come from it are that some of it's applicable to mobile food trucks and some of ice cream trucks. But when parked, mobile food trucks cannot emit amplified music or sound. So if they're parked on somebody's street, they're not going to just sit there and play
Which
the
they,
same
yeah.
tune.
Well, that's
When-
great, that's
when
an
moving,
additional option.
They must follow state and local laws regarding amplified sound. Food trucks cannot operate in the same location for more than 1 hour a day. And also, as I mentioned, parks, but going to the 100 feet that Mr. McDermott mentioned, that ordinance proposed making amplified sound that disturbs the peace of nearby residents prohibited, including sounds that are audible from 100 feet from the source or from any exterior edge of a building, structure, or vehicle. Now, between now and before it goes to city council, we can do a further search to see what happened to this proposed ordinance and whether other cities are regulating sound in a different way. So,
Yeah, I think
At
it's.
least it's a start.
That's a great addition about making sure they turn it off when they sit, because, you know,
If in fact we decide that we want to put that language in, as stated, the 100 feet, plus the fact that the vehicle cannot play the music while it's stopped, is that agreeable with everyone on the panel? That we
Yeah,
could,
you have to define stop.
Right.
It would be stop to
Park.
wind as opposed to at a stop sign or red light.
parked to make their sale.
Yeah, then use park.
So just to bring to your attention, there is an operational standard applicable to all food trucks, which is item 3J, which says vendors shall not use loud music, amplification devices, bullhorns, crying out, or any other audible methods to gain attention.
Oh, really?
It does say that.
Okay.
So I was right about something, right?
Where was that from, Gary?
Operational standards in applicable to all food trucks, it's item J.
And what does that say again? I'm sorry.
Vendors shall not use loud music, amplification devices, bullhorns, crying out, or any other audible methods to gain attention.
If I may,
That seems to be in conflict with the very logic and history of ice cream trucks.
well, that's why you have at the end that option, because this is an amendment to our existing food dispensing truck vehicles.
What if we narrowed that from prohibiting music to just a plain old ringing device, or like, you know, the bells that used to be on the ice cream trucks? They didn't use amplified music back when I was a kid. I don't think, Mr. Seifert, would you agree? We're both kind of that era when Good Humor truck would come around and you would hear the clanging of the bell, but you wouldn't be getting loud Christmas music in July, which I found more amusing than irritating, but, you know, I just,
So
And-
I
and,
think
you
what
know-
you're suggesting is regulating the type of noise that a truck can make.
I don't
So
know if that would hold
I'm
up in
concerned about
court.
the First Amendment
Yeah,
aspects of commercial
exactly.
speech.
That wouldn't hold up in court for a minute. That would
They
not
may want
hold
to
up.
distinguish, one truck may want to distinguish itself from another truck.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But-
So there we are, we're back to that. And I think we would probably run into a problem with total ban with First Amendment. Would that not
I'm
be,
not sure.
yes, you're not sure?
I'm not sure.
Well, that would put
It's
it
been a
into
minute.
ice cream trucks being
Yeah.
viable as a business.
Right.
So, Mr.
But we
Chairman,
could still put restrictions in then, as far as amplification levels. If we want that, try that as a wording, amplification levels perhaps. And time of use, modify that a little bit to more narrow it down to a particular hour rather than sunset,
what's the beginning time again? What does it say here?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to propose a motion that we approve the item with the caveats that no amplified sound shall be heard outside of 100 feet, that the, number two, that the vehicle, when stopped, that the music or
And parked.
amplification needs to be
Parked.
parked, needs to be turned off, and that the hours be from 8 to 5.
Oh,
8 in the morning, no.
8 in the morning, yeah.
no.
I don't want my kid eating ice cream at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay,
Yeah,
how
let
about,
the kids
Well,
get to
10
school
o'clock is-
first.
how about 9 to 5?
Well, nothing wrong with 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock is fine.
I'm
Kids
fine
are in
with 10
school.
That is good,
Yeah, 10
because
is, 10 is
then
good.
you're done rush hour.
Yes.
So the last thing you need is like rush hour traffic, and then there's like a big ice cream truck in front of you,
Right.
driving
Yes,
5 miles an hour,
10 a.m. is,
road rage.
Okay.
yes.
10 a.m. to what?
We don't want Mr. Good
Three?
Humor getting shot in the middle of the street. It would really look bad.
no, because.
So
of,
for,
you know,
for
I-
children's
people-
safety, and Is there a problem with sunset? I mean, aside from the
Well, because
technical,
sunset is like, for instance, sunset now is like 7:30 at night.
well, what's the problem with having dessert after dinner?
Well, because a lot-
darkness is the issue. 7 o'clock, it's dark in the wintertime.
Listen, Gary, listen, see, I'm trying to be, back in the day, when I was on the code enforcement board, and, you know, one of the problems was, the volume of calls was the fact that we had become a city where we had individuals who were working those 2 and 3 jobs, who were, you know, doing that 3-hour kind of shift. I mean, I had people call me who their wives were nurses, okay, who came home at 3 in the afternoon, okay, because they worked 11 to 3. They came home at 3 and the husband's off, in the morning, so everybody's like shifting. And so, yeah, so, we need to be a little sensitive to that. So maybe that's why I said 10 to 5.
So how about except for temporary use permits? Like if there's an event, an ice cream truck could get a permit to stay after 5.
Can we say 10 to 7? I do believe the idea that after dinner, one may want to have a nice dessert, and that may be their time where they actually have their rush hour, if you will. That
So, but
Doing-
7 in the winter is dark.
dark. So let's
That's why I
say
was saying
7 in the
sunset.
summer, 6 in the winter.
But we'd have to specify those months.
Yeah, I would rather go with sunset, because
Sure.
at that point, it gets too particular,
Yeah,
because.
it gives it more, it also kind of gives you a little bit more of an ability to enforce it, because sunset,
Is
you know,
sunset.
sunset.
Okay,
And-
A
and-
lot of apps use sunset as
Right.
a defined
okay.
event.
I'm fine with
Okay,
sunset.
so 10
So
a.m. to sunset?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
so those are the two,
3.
Except for
Yes.
temporary,
10 a.m. to
no
sunset.
amplification, no music when we park, and then 10 a.m. to
Sunset, yeah.
sunset.
except for
No.
temporary use permits?
Yes.
Temporary use permits are already a given, like, for special events, so I don't think we need to call it
Oh,
out, it's
okay.
already there.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
because that would apply to all trucks regardless of ice cream or whatever. Okay, so those are the 3 caveats, everybody understands that. Now,
10 a.m. to sunset's already,
That's when they can vend, right,
yeah, it's already here,
right.
3D.
I'm sorry, so then we only have 2 caveats. No amplified sound outside 100 feet, and that the music must be turned off when parked, when the truck is parked.
And the
Right.
previous ones that we discussed as part of the presentation,
Why don't we say stopped rather than parked?
because if they're stopped at a stop
Stop
sign
sign.
or a
Yeah,
red
but,
light,
they're gonna say parked and say, well, I didn't turn it off because I hadn't parked yet.
it's the definition of park.
I hate to nitpick, but.
No, I mean, I
We
think
can
if you
put
had a
time-
stop
To
sign,
make it clear, we can put a time, like, so for stop for longer than 5 minutes, or,
Then who's
that's,
gonna be responsible
Yeah.
for timing
Yeah.
that now? It's
I think
impossible
park, because you have to
enforceability.
actually put the car in park,
park's fine.
park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any
Thank you for that.
self-respecting guy is gonna park his truck before he opens the window to sell ice cream.
Right, exactly.
You hope, yes, you hope.
All right, so there we have, now, we're all good with that?
The
Now-
poor ice cream man tonight.
So, Mr. Chair,
They are unknown unless they are watching. They, You know,
Mr. Chair, before you go to a vote,
yes.
I have a question for the Deputy City Attorney. So the language I suggested on the operational standards, which is subsection 3, applies generally to all mobile food trucks, right? So how does that fit to all of these criteria that we're doing for ice cream trucks? Is it incorporated by reference, or do we need to add another section that says, right, yeah, but the question is, how does it, we have all these other standards that apply to ice cream trucks. Do we need to state that violation of those standards result in revocation as well, or it fits?
I think it's already,
incorporated?
I think it's already incorporated and clear.
Okay,
That there's some standards that will, that's why, one of the things when I was collaborating with staff on this, I wanted to define what ice cream trucks were versus a mobile food truck, because we already knew that ice cream trucks were gonna have different operational standards versus food trucks, so I don't think there's a need. I think it's clear that they have their own standards that they have to comply with, separate and apart from a food truck.
and the violation of which,
Correct,
okay.
correct.
All right. Okay, so Chair will entertain a motion for approval.
So moved.
Mr. Seifried is moving for approval of the ordinance,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Lemur. We will do a roll call.
I'm sorry, I thought it was Ms.
No, he was,
I was proposing a motion.
you were
He
proposing
proposed a motion.
Mr. Seifried, I apologize.
I'll forgive you.
Okay. Ms. McDermott, could you once more verify your motion, sir?
Okay, the motion is to approve the item with the additional restrictions of no sound shall be audible outside of 100 feet, that any audible music or sound shall be turned off when parked.
Right,
And the third thing is that the hours shall be from 10 a.m. to sunset.
right, and that's
And
already
that's
listed
where
in the.
we're, that's
Okay.
why I said we have only
Yeah,
two
that was
caveats,
already
because that's
listed
already
in the item.
listed. So with the two
All right,
caveats
great.
of 100, no sound outside of 100 feet, and that music should be turned off when the vehicle is parked.
Right, the motion has
Okay.
been made by Mr. McDermott,
And
Again.
second?
seconded by Mr. Seifried. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Seifried?
Yes.
Mr. Seifried is yes. Mr. Bob?
Yes.
Mr. Bob is yes. Ms. Blemmer?
Yes, Mr. Ice Cream.
Thank you. Thank you, Naomi. Dr. Besson?
Yes.
Dr. Besson's a yes. Mr. McDermott?
Yes.
Yes, and Mr. Ernst is also a yes. So it passes
What about
unanimously.
yourself?
Thank you so much for everybody's
Mr.
input
Chair.
on this. And
What about you?
Well, I said
Oh,
Mr.
Mr.
Ernst, the chair.
Ernst. Oh, God.
Yes.
Okay,
My
it's
name-
late, sorry.
yes.
You are Mr. Ernst, yes.
Chair votes yes. Motion moves 6-0. Again, thank you all for your input. Greatly appreciate it that we worked that through. So now we're fine for October 1st for the next meeting. Do we have any committee reports to make at all?
No, sir.
Staff? Any old business? None? No new business, none, and so call for adjournment.
So moved.
So moved, second it, and
Second.
we are adjourned. Thank you all. Very good input tonight, everyone. I know this is-
Does anybody want to go